Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Highlights. I am your host, Mermaidmama Maggie, or you can just call me Maggie. And we have a great group tonight to welcome in our new president. It is Inauguration Week, so we had a really exciting week. Not as insane as it has been the past few weeks, which is a good thing. So without further ado, let me introduce our amazing panel for tonight. Let's start out with Food X Bert.
Hey everybody, I'm Food Expert. My actual name is Bert or Robert, and I've been traveling for 10 years living in China, and now I decided to make my own YouTube channel and try crazy foods and try to show people like there's more to the world than just, Alabama or wherever they're from. I mean, the Trumpers need to travel, that's how they can get an education. And so I just want to convert people that are obsessed with Trump because they probably never left their state, let alone especially not the country. So that's what I do. I try to convince people to go travel and see the world on my YouTube channel, Food Expert.
Awesome.
So anyways,
and next we have the hilarious and informative Walter Masterson.
Hello everyone. Yeah, so I make comedy, and I don't know, lately everyone's been calling it journalism, but it's comedy. I swear I'm funny. I swear to God.
You are hilarious, but also informative. You are helping people dive into a world that they would not normally get to see. So you're doing the good work.
Thank you.
And next we have Jonathan from Some People Like It.
It's like guerrilla comedy journalism, Walter. It's amazing. I'm Jonathan. I'm Some People Like It on all platforms. Follow me. I do political comedy, really bad comedy skits. And I'm on Twitch starting from zero. So follow me on Twitch, same username, Some People Like It. And I'm doing a lot of live streams from there from now on. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. And next we have Saadia M.
Hi, my username on TikTok is Saadia____M, and I do political, I guess, music videos, if you will. And I'm just very in a kind of zen zone right now, since I don't really have to like report on something crazy every day. So,
yay!
It's good to have a slow news day, considering what we've been through. I think we're all okay with that. And last but not least, we have Shay Detmore, a new member of our live stream.
Yay!
Hey, hey, I'm Shay. I'm an actor, and I also do political comedy. And I'm at Shay Detmore all over the internet. So very easy. Okay.
Awesome. And we lost somebody else, the American moderate. I don't know where he went, but I'm sure he'll be popping back up again, and we'll do his intro when he comes back on. So what a week, guys. We've got a new president. What are your thoughts? What are you feeling? I'm going to show a small clip of just kind of an inauguration recap, and then I want to hear your feelings about your relief, what you're feeling, just kind of the emotions that you went through this week. I know it was highly emotional for people. A lot of people talked about sleeping a lot and wanting to actually go and take a nap after what we've been through for the last 4 years. So here's a small little clip.
This is America's day.
This ceremony is the culmination of 244 years of a democracy.
This is Democracy's Day, a day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve.
There is always light if only we're brave enough to see it. We're brave enough to be it.
There is now new leadership in the White House. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris sworn into office. Vice President Harris now the first woman of color to hold that position.
And so today, at this time, in this place, let's start afresh, all of us. Let's begin to listen to one another again, hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury.
what a week. And now we have our 46th president. So let's start with Shay, since you're new to the show. What were your feelings after the end of an era and the beginning of a new one?
Well, you talked about sleep. I passed the fuck out. I'm sorry. I don't know if I can curse on this.
You sure as hell can.
Yeah, okay. So I passed the fuck out. And because I've been so, I think with what happened at the Capitol 2 weeks ago, I had been even more wound up than usual and tense and just unable to sleep and all of that stuff. So it was such a huge relief for me. And I'm sure everyone felt this way, to feel that there was some bit of sanity left in our country. So I felt amazing, and I've been actually sleeping in the past couple days, and it's been hard for me to get back to it. I mean, I do a lot of political comedy that is daily show-esque, where I go over the news, but I also really enjoy doing sketches. And I just did a sketch with Fauci from yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw him at the press briefing, but how light and fun he was. That's the feeling that I've had. And I felt so amazing doing something that was positive. And, obviously we have so much work to do, but I think it's so important to stop for a second and celebrate and really enjoy this. And, we got a lot of shit to do going forward, but I feel good and a lot more relaxed. It was like getting a massage after a long time and not realizing how tense you were.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to speak to how this week went for them, and about the inauguration and kind of the change of power?
Yeah,
I think it was great. Go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say it was great, but I love that you covered it while you were out there, because it was like we got to see the crazy Walters, got to see the crazy interactions, and then we got to see what it was like afterwards. And I agree with what Shay said. It's been almost like a relief, but I know there's a lot of work to get done, and I guess I'm also kind of scared of the toxicity of Trump, because I don't think toxic people actually disappear. They just kind of like rear their head up, and so I guess I'm kind of nervous for that too at the same time, but it's nice to see that everything is kind of falling into place now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Walter, can you kind of talk to the fact that you were there for the insurrection, and then you were also there for the inauguration? What was the difference in like the feel of the city? I mean, I'm sure it was very, very opposite.
Oh yeah, no, it was, I actually, so I thought about this, and I thought, so during the inauguration, DC was locked down. It looked like the Hunger Games. It looked like it was just totally militarized. And I thought about it, and I thought, if January 6th had not happened, then it would have just been business as usual. Trump supporters would have shown up. There would have been clashes, and I think there would have been actual bloodshed. I think it would have been bad, because the way they had it, you couldn't drive into the city. Getting anywhere near just the perimeter was difficult, even on foot. I was on foot. I took the train in so that I didn't have to worry about having a car, and like being in a car was impossible. Being on foot was challenging. There's checkpoints and good. So I thought, there would have been clashes. There was like 10 Trump supporters that showed up, and there wasn't a lot. So there was no Proud Boys. Like none of those people were showing up to start stuff, because there's no point. And like, what was I gonna say? So I remember like the morning when he like flew away in the helicopter, just like Shay said, like I was exhausted. I was like, oh my God, like, I was like, I need a nap. I was like, wait, is he gone? I'm like, did we really just survive all this nonsense? Like, like, can we have like a boring president that like does boring stuff and doesn't like live tweet Fox and Friends? Like, I never even liked Biden, to be perfectly honest, but like, I've come to like him because he's just like, he just like does boring stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, wait. Like, I think we've all been conditioned to like, and he's just like, hey, I'm going to like go solve this problem and, do some other boring things. And you're like, oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's boring, but Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I was going to say, I share the feeling of relief that everybody else has, but also like boring. It's like it's normal, like this return to normalcy, like all these things he did in the first day, these executive orders he signed, like he was doing the basic normal stuff an administration is supposed to do. Like there was no vaccine rollout. They're having to start from the ground up on all of that. All these executive orders are just plugging holes that any normal human being in that position would do. All this stuff was left undone. So that drama's gone and it's boring, but it's just normal stuff leaders should be doing. And also I wanted to say, Trump got taken off all these social media outlets and like nothing bad happened. Like everybody's like, oh, you can't go ban people, free speech, blah, blah, blah. They just took them off and things calmed down and everything was good and cool. And like we went back to normal and it was like awesome. It was great.
That is so true. Absolutely.
Did you guys know that Trump did not pick up Biden from Delaware? Like Biden had to get his own airplane.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The reason why Trump left so early was because Trump he did not want to ask permission to borrow Air Force One to take him to Florida. So he was actually like leaving early in the morning, and he wasn't coming to the inauguration because he didn't want to ask for permission from Biden because Biden would be the president, having access to Air Force One, and then
Petty LaBelle to the end.
Yes.
Because he was still in the air when Biden sworn in. Then his plane is automatically downgraded to Air Force 2.
In the midair.
He wanted to just be on Air Force. It was. I tried to get into that last thing because I was like, wouldn't it be amazing to go and just insult him and insult his supporters like right at the end, like. And I was so upset. Like they locked that down. It was just only like staff, invite only staff. And I was like, ah. I was like, that would be a great send off. Like as he's getting on the plane and me being able to scream out. But I was so disappointed that didn't happen. I would have,
I love that downgrade. Like, what does that include? Do they take the remote control from him or something? Like what? Like this is Air Force 2 now. Like
No more Diet Coke for you.
Exactly. You get 2 Diet Cokes. That's it. Third one we're going to charge.
You don't know.
They took the Diet Coke button out of the Oval Office too.
You yet?
I know.
What were your
one of my favorites?
Amp, you left for a beat. Why don't you introduce your page real quick? I don't know where you went.
My internet went down. So yeah. Okay. So basically, don't mind all the laundry over here. I'm a little behind. My internet went down, so I apologize. So the American Moderate Party is basically what I'm hoping to create over the next year. I'd hope to create a third party that is basically a social democratic platform that I think we desperately need in the United States right now. And we'll see how it goes. But that's the premise is to create a third party that will actually sort of end the two-party system as we know it. And I've been mostly committed to undermining the Donald Trump's administration for the last 6 months. And that's about it. And then it's the American Moderate on TikTok and the American Moderate Party on YouTube. And I'm on Twitch and Twitter as well.
Do you want to speak to real quick kind of your feelings of relief or what your feelings were this week? We're kind of recapping a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I was just literally watching, Steve Schmidt right before I came on, and I've got a TikTok I'm going to put out right after this. Basically, there's, Rand Paul right now is sitting in Congress saying that they're upset that that Biden is talking badly about the Republican Party by saying he wants to get rid of racism in America. And I'm like, man, if that isn't a guilty conscience, I've never seen one. And beyond that, Schmidt is basically saying that the Republican Party is fractured. As you know, I started the GOP is dead hashtag that I really push hard. And I do think that party's fractured, and you're going to have the Patriot Party wing and you're going to have the Republican Party wing. That's their traditional party. And I think they're going to have a lot of struggles in 2022 that'll probably lead to a lot of strife within that party. In the end, I think it'll make sure that they'll never have a majority of either house or a presidency again, which is frankly one of my lifelong goals. And I'm pleased to see it happening.
Awesome. That is a perfect segue into a clip that I have about what is next for the Republican Party. So let's watch it.
This is no longer Donald Trump's White House, but it may still be his Republican Party, depending on who you ask.
This idea of moving forward without Donald Trump in the Republican Party is a disaster for the Republican Party.
Not all Republicans agree as the GOP grapples with what the former president leaves in his wake. Chaos, controversy, and crises, like the attack on the Capitol that infuriated many in his party who blame him, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell.
The mob was fed lies. They were provoked by the president and other powerful people.
Senate Republicans will get a gut check moment when they vote on whether to convict the former president in his upcoming impeachment trial. And even tacit approval from McConnell could sway enough senators to vote against President Trump. But some allies are making a different argument.
Most Americans will never understand why the first thing we're going to do here, potentially, is an impeachment trial of a president that isn't even in office.
He's not in office. He's not even in Washington, with the former president decamping for his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. Gone, but he hopes not forgotten.
I just want to say goodbye, but hopefully it's not a long-term goodbye. We'll see each other again.
President Trump's making clear he has no intention of fading quietly from a spotlight he's sought for years, hinting he could run again.
We will be back in some form.
Reportedly toying with starting his own political party ahead of 2024. But at this point, it seems unlikely his presence would clear a field that could include his now former number 2, Vice President Mike Pence, whose relationship with the president broke down after the Capitol siege and who is widely believed to be planning a run for the White House himself after attending President Biden's inauguration, saying goodbye for now to Washington and making an emotional return to Indiana.
It is great to be back home again. Thank you for coming out.
So all of this frames what is really one of the biggest questions for the GOP moving forward. Do they end up splintering into multiple parties, the Trump loyalists versus the more establishment conservatives, or do they figure out a way to stay under the same umbrella?
All right, guys, what do you think? Where do you think the Republicans are going to go from here? Now that your leader is gone.
I know this answer. I've spoken to, and it's actually kind of frightening to me because I've spoken to tons of Trump supporters, tons of rallies. They're all saying the exact same thing. They are going to primary challenge every Republican candidate. So but it's not in a.
That's not a good thing. Yeah.
No, it is.
No, I mean, you're going to see people on
more radical
representatives that say words like the deep state and cabal and believe it. Mm-hmm. So you think. So, I mean, the same thing happened with the Tea Party, and it's not like the fun part. Like now we have people that are like completely insane. Whereas, you saw some of these people in the GOP were like terrible, and you're going to be like, wow, it's going to go from you're like, wow, it gets worse. And you're like, oh, much worse. And they're the people that they're going to primary are every one of them. Everyone that didn't go along with Trump when he tried to overturn the election. So the only people that are safe are like Hawley in the Senate and Ted Cruz, and then Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it. The rest of them are getting primary challenged, and they're going to replace them with people that are insane. And yeah, they talk about doing the Patriot Party, but they're also primarying all of them.
Yeah. No, the reason I was clapping and saying it's a good thing is because, I mean, it has to happen. These voters aren't going away, right? They're not going to disappear. Yep. So this needs to be on the stage, and they need to have this battle out within themselves. So these voters aren't going away. These politicians want this base. They want that voting base. So this has to happen. So I understand electing these nut jobs like Boebert and Hawley and all these people doesn't sound great, but this process has to play out no matter how ugly it is. And them splintering and fracturing, if that's what it takes for them to get to a point where they are a real party again, then that's what has to happen.
You know what? I've been saying for a while that the Whig Party, the modern Whig Party, is the GOP, and that they're pretty much done. They're going to fracture, and they're pretty much done at this point. And you're right that what's going to happen though, and Schmidt was talking about this, that they basically had the abolitionists against the slave owners in the Whig Party, and it was irreconcilable. And at that point, they started to do their purge, which is what they're doing to Cheney right now. They're purging her out of their party, and they're becoming radicalized. And his whole take is that basically the radicals are going to win in 2022. He thinks that they're going to steamroll the traditional Republicans, and that party, and they're going to get into Congress like Boebert did, and that we're going to have sort of organized chaos for a while because of that. But that effectively will be the end of the Republican Party as a result.
Right. It's some
Well,
short-term
that's a
pain.
terrifying thing, though. I mean, we're dealing now with, we've exposed all of the vulnerabilities in our system so that anyone who is remotely together can exploit them. So some of these quote unquote nut jobs, I'm worried about someone like Holly, who is more put together than Trump and can put on a face and can exploit things in a way that I think Trump was so bumbling and so, you know, mentally he was dealing with his own narcissism and way too much to that. We benefited from that. I'm afraid of them going super extreme and then finding someone who can exploit it with much more ease, because we have a lot of, the only reason we have this democracy is because a good amount of people actually said, no, I'm going to actually do my job. But there were too many opportunities for something to go wrong. And I think that anyone who is paying attention, we have to be really alert. And, you know, I want to celebrate the fracturing of it. And, you know, I've made jokes and made sketches about them eating themselves, you know, before. But I do it because I need to cope with my own anxiety about it.
Cathartic.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, though, that, you know, it's exposed a lot of our vulnerabilities, and it would only really take somebody that was just a little bit more charismatic, with a little bit more finesse about them, and not such a bumbling idiot like Trump, and we'd be in a lot more trouble, big time.
But I think Trump had that base because he's been in the spotlight for so long. I think he created an image of a billionaire and, you know, I'm a success and I'm a this and I'm a that. And I think that plays to part of that narcissism. So I agree with you guys that, you know, I see the fracturing, but I do think that fracturing is going to be very loyal to just his type of brand. So, I mean, I'm okay for it. And I'm also okay for, you know, just us being more cohesive as a liberal movement and just standing back and watching that happen on their end.
Well, the thing is, too, is we are not, I mean, the Democratic Party is not just one party. We are multiple parties, in my opinion. And
Correct.
Really, you know, I think in our own perfect world, we would be fighting over certain things, and we have to get better at being more cohesive to fight this, because fascism you can't easily come back from. So,
right.
Speaking of fascism, I asked all these people, like, what's fascism? And, like, they don't know what fascism is. Like, because they talk about Antifa, and they're like, well, Antifas are the real fascists. I'm like, I'm sorry, what's fascism? And like, they don't, their definitions, I mean, they're never historically accurate. It's just sort of, and then the way that they, if you look at OAN, the way that they report on fascism, they, I mean, the way that they use the word Antifa as a blanket. Like, if someone's a leftist, they're Antifa. Like, it's not even against Trump. They're not even burning anything down. It's just like, if you wanted, you know, socialized medicine, you're Antifa. And they sort of toss this word around. Like, they're very liberal with that term. It's a bit weird.
Oh yeah.
That's how good the messaging is on the right. That's how good the messaging is on the right, because they just hammer Antifa home all day, every day, and eventually gets in their heads and they blame Antifa for everything. I mean, they're so much better at messaging, or maybe their audience is more apt to receive messaging than we are, but they're much better at messaging than we are. But so they think everything is Antifa now. It's quite hilarious.
Yep.
Now, we've been talking about, you know, in this next phase, and Joe Biden, one of his biggest things is unity, right? And I know we've been talking a lot about this, you know, among us, no unity before accountability. Now, what does that mean to you guys? And what do you think we can do to unify this country at this point? Or can we even do that at all?
Bring back the Fairness in Media Act, so you don't have, like, people like OAN and Newsmax just spreading garbage. I mean, it's their fault that January 6th happened. more than
Completely.
Fox News. People keep blaming Fox News. I'm like, OAN and Newsmax are like the absolute worst. And they just, the stuff they say that they get away with saying is nonsense.
I agree with you there. That's definitely an issue. I think also the fact that we have majority parties is a fundamental problem in our system. So what I would love to see is there only be plurality parties and never be majority parties over 50% again. And that would require the democratic process to work. So let's say you do have 6 or 7 parties. And I made a video about this a little bit ago, and it got a pretty good amount of views where people were appreciating that concept. So let's say AMP actually becomes a reality and we want to get something legislated, we would need either the modern Republican Party, if it still exists, or some other faction, or the new Lincoln Party that seems to be on the Lincoln Project's mind. But some other party would have to come and work with us to get any legislation done. And that is what democracy is supposed to be. And since we have these majority parties now, and it's one or the other, they literally are polarizing to the extremes in order to get voters. And the rhetoric gets more extreme in order to keep people away from the other side. And we don't have a democratic process. We just have winners and losers.
I completely agree with that. The main issue is that the levers that need to turn that allow other parties to get a seat at the table are controlled by the two parties, and they have no interest. Like, their survival depends on it being a two-party system, but they're the ones that have to pull the lever. So I don't know how that's going to happen. I mean, ranked choice voting is a good step forward, but one of the two parties have to agree to allow other parties a seat at the table, and that is against their own interests, and they've proven to be way too selfish, which is sad.
And just a quick follow-up on that, I just posted about the solution that I do think we should have is a national referendum on issues that are specifically where Congress or the Senate is specifically basically voting on their own fate, right? Which would be those sorts of issues where they have control over their own fate. They should not have control, right? So let's say campaign finance reform, let's say term limits. Those should be national referendum votes, not the Fox guarding the henhouse kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. But again, to get to that point, you'd need them to pull the lever probably to get you to that point, right?
True. Right. So we sort of need a revolt in order to get there. But, whatever.
Baby steps.
So did anybody hear the news about what Boris Johnson said today? It's very big news. The new variant is more deadly than the original one, and it's
significantly
a lot more. He said, I mean, if it was just a little bit, he wouldn't even say it. He would just try to say, oh, yeah, no problem, you guys. No, he's saying it's more deadly. It's not good. That's really not good.
So the vaccine's effective against it, though?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's so my brother was explaining it to me that these vaccines they may not address like all of it, so the antibodies may not be completely addressing everything, but you won't get to the death rate that we're at now. So the vaccines are still very much in play. Everybody should get vaccinated, but these are the kinds of variants, and when you put the virus under stress, and it's allowed to travel around, that's when they mutate. That's why this push for everybody getting vaccinated should be the priority right now, I think, for the Biden administration. Actually, a global message should be everybody needs to do this. Otherwise, we're just going to keep having variants of this, and maybe it will get to a point where these vaccines will no longer be, a viable option. So this is a time crunch right now. But I did hear slightly about what you said about Boris. I just remembered now. It feels like today feels like I took a lot of naps and worked in between, and I forgot that. So it's interesting. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, there's the variant from Brazil. There's the variant from South Africa. There is the UK one. It's just really not looking very good. And Trump just let all the flights come in here, so we've got, big problems awaiting us. Like all the flights from UK just coming in, no quarantine. Every other sane country has quarantine, has testing when you before you leave. You have to be tested.
Yeah.
Well,
and just no vaccine plan whatsoever.
I mean, to tell you the truth, even the last few episodes of this show, we barely even got to talk about COVID because there was so much going on in the world and so much craziness that it was like COVID was the side note, and COVID is like the biggest thing that's happening on right now. I mean, and it's getting worse by the day. We just passed 400,000 deaths. Yeah. I mean, it's a very, very scary time that we're in right now.
And we were talking about the riot in front of DC, and then them raiding the place, and then one lady got shot dead. I mean, that should have been actually very small news compared to 400,000 dead and 3,000 people dying per day, 4,000 or whatever it is. It's crazy.
4,000, yeah.
I think it's a lot of fatigue.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually, I'm going to run a clip right since we jumped into COVID. We're going to go there right now. It's actually been 1 year. So COVID just had its birthday. And I actually live in the area where COVID was born. And so I'm going to run a little clip on that. So here we go.
President Biden releasing details of his COVID-19 response plan, including 10 executive orders. Meg Terrell joins us right now with more on that and what we've learned about the virus after 1 year of this pandemic. Meg, good morning.
Good morning, Becky. A lot of news today on what the Biden administration will do. Those 10 executive orders they plan to sign include using the Defense Production Act to increase supplies of PPE, vaccines, testing supplies, reimbursing states for more use of personnel, including from the National Guard, focusing on testing, developing more medicines, better using data, creating a health equity task force, directing HHS and the Department of Education to create guidance for better opening schools and providing the resources for schools to do so. This is a long list of things we expect to hear about from the Biden administration today. Guys, and it comes, of course, literally 1 year to the day since the CDC announced the first case of COVID on U.S. soil. That was January 21st, 2020, and this was before it was even called COVID. It was 2019 novel coronavirus at that time. Since then, of course, the country has recorded 24 million cases, and they have just started accelerating over the last few months. I reached out to 10 experts across public health, medicine, industry, and business for their reflections on the year behind us and the lessons that we've learned. And Dr. Paul Offit, a vaccine expert and infectious disease professor at CHOP in Philadelphia, saying it's not the winter respiratory virus that it was built to be. It is much more far-reaching and dangerous than that. Guys, but in that year, of course, we've also seen the rapid development of medicines and vaccines. We now have 2 medicines on the market for early disease and those antibody drugs from Regeneron and Eli Lilly. Got at least 3 medicines being used in the hospitalized setting, from dexamethasone to Gilead's remdesivir, and another one from Eli Lilly. And of course, those 2 vaccines that are on the market, 3 more following in phase 3 trials. But those reflections from these experts really focusing on both what we've learned about the virus itself. Remember at the beginning, we were all wiping down our groceries because we thought this spread by droplets and spread like the flu. The realization that this could spread through the air and how much of it is asymptomatic, many experts pointed to as really important, as well as, of course, the politicization of public health and the importance of leadership from the national level. Scott Gottlieb telling us the importance of public-private partnership and really focusing on the failures of testing in the early stages, saying that the refusal of CDC to pivot early to engage commercial labs and commercial test kits left us blind to the early spread. He said it was a historic failure. But guys, on a brighter note, a lot of experts pointed to this miracle of 2 vaccines that we have for this virus, and it shows that if we put the funding into the science, we can do this really quickly.
Yeah, that was a big
It's been a
deal.
long year. The fact that it's been a year has been kind of crazy. I don't know. I mean, looking back, it's been pretty insane for me thinking about what this year has actually been as far as COVID. But, even now, yesterday, I was getting work, and he's going to have to start from scratch as far as getting these vaccines kind of out. They were left with a mess.
It's just really too bad that we didn't get the testing done early on. We could have shipped off the test to other countries, and we could have actually made it very rare to get coronavirus even now. Not coronavirus, but COVID-19. It's just like we could have easily had a better plan. Like, Trump wanted his buddies to have the contract, and they wanted to include the normal flu and COVID-19 in the same test kit. And it's like, we didn't have time for that. It exploded.
Yeah, I'm in New York City, where it's just devastated. Like, businesses, it's been devastating. It's devastated the city. I mean, businesses have closed. It's been it's wiped out a lot of businesses. It sucked. and it also just upset me where we locked down really hard and the rest of the country didn't.
Yep.
And it sort of negated like any progress we made. It was like we locked down for nothing, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
That made me upset.
about I don't, since we're still kind of in it, I don't think we're all going to really understand the PTSD that we're going to have from this and the realization that over 400,000 people have actually died, that our government mismanaged this so bad that it caused, irreparable damage, to our economy and to the health and safety of our citizens here. It really is his true failure, Donald Trump's true failure.
I completely agree, Maggie, as far as like the PTSD from that. But to me, it's a PTSD from 400,000 people dying and an administration having no plan and half the country not realizing it or not caring about it. That's the part that gets me. Like, it is so obvious they did not have a plan, didn't want to have a plan, did nothing that they should have done or could have done to stop this or slow it or stop the spread. And half the people still don't even exist. My mother still doesn't even want to get a vaccine. She's like, I'm not sure what's in it. I'm like, mother, you eat Whataburger once a week. What are you talking about?
They did have a plan. It was herd immunity. It was genocide. That was
herd immunity. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Atlas.
They weren't going to have a plan. They weren't going to have a plan for a hoax. That's the thing. They never thought it was a serious threat, and because in their mind it's a flu, they weren't going to have a plan. So I wasn't really surprised when they didn't inherit anything.
Yeah. So they did know that it. I mean, we know now that they were aware of just how deadly and how contagious it was and how big of a problem.
In February, they were aware.
Yeah, it's just a matter of their self-interest. And really, it's dumb because I think that he would have fared a lot better in this last election had he come out immediately and taken this seriously and, just done the bare minimum, I really think. But
that's a good point. That's a good point.
That he actually was given like the gift of COVID on a platter as far as being a hero. Mm-hmm. He could have done so much. He could have saved so much and done so much and actually been a good person, but he didn't do it.
Yeah, and he would have won the election for sure.
He
would have. No, I was agreeing. Sorry, go ahead. I mean, I'll just say that if he came out and said that it was patriotic to wear a mask, he would have been a hero. He would have solved the problem, and he would have won the election. So in fairness, like, we're all sort of lucky that he was an idiot. But at the same time, if he said it was patriotic, rah, they would have. I made a post earlier on that he was probably the only guy that could have convinced the conservative base to actually wear a mask. If it was Obama, there would have been like no effing way. So he actually had the ability to be like the one guy that could have actually got them to do it. And he said no. And it's why he lost. I agree. Shay was right on with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it's so I mean, just if you look at his own self-interest, right, he's too dumb to realize that he needed to do hardly any work, really, to be able to do this well. Just leave it up to the experts, let them do it, but his own ego got in the way and he thought it was better for himself to downplay it. And, if he would just pretend it didn't exist, then the public wouldn't notice.
Yeah.
Thousands of people dying.
I'm not gonna miss the gaslighting where I'm like,
oh my god, yeah.
It's like I mean I'm in New York City. I'm like looking at there's modular morgue trucks because the morgues at all the hospitals are full. So like there's like actual the bodies are piling up, and things like that. Like things like being at the Capitol and being told like that it was actually just Antifa. It was like all a false flag. Like, and I'm like, I was literally there. Yeah. And like, what are you saying? Mm-hmm. What is wrong with me? Like I'm in COVID. Like I'm seeing COVID firsthand. And you're telling me none of that happened. Like none of them actually died. Like they didn't die. They died of something else, and we're covering it up to call it that. Like stuff like that. Like I'm really not gonna miss that part. Like that part is like so it's completely abusive. It's like you're like you're like, what is reality right now? You're like, this is that's why when I'm around them for so long and I interview them for so long, it kind of affects me because it's literally like I'm, string theory. Like I've just been dropped into an alternate timeline.
Yeah.
Did you see some of them were saying that? Did you see some of them were saying the inauguration was pre-recorded, like it didn't really actually happen, and then
let me give you all of them.
Trump is going to come back. I mean, really?
Here it's So the police were going to come like an episode of Law and Order and just cuff Biden in the middle of the inauguration. Which I was like, you know what? You really have a lot of confidence in our criminal justice system to think that's how criminal justice works in this country. So first off, he was inaugurated at 11:50, and the law says it's supposed to be inaugurated at 12 o'clock. So it's illegal, and the person inaugurating him was not authorized to give inaugurations. Yes. Once all the deep state documents come out, Biden will resign on the 21st. Oh
my God!
There's still time. Like once all the fraud stuff comes out and it's made public, then of course it's and then the other one. Then there's they switched places like Face Off with like Nicolas Cage.
Oh, the Face Off thing, man.
Have you heard of Operation
Was that not a
Shadow?
joke though?
Have you heard of Operation Shadow Prez that's going around? Talking about how
is that different than the Face Off one?
That Donald Trump is actually still the president, and that everything went off like without a hitch, and like it's all like. They just actually Joe Biden and everyone have already been arrested, but they didn't want to like incite riots in like our country, so they're just pretending that he's the president, but Donald Trump is really the president, so he's the shadow pres.
Trust the plan.
Wow.
Trust the plan, Maggie.
I love that though. Trust it, and then whatever Biden and the Democrats do, it's really Trump. So just calm the fuck down.
Well,
this is your shadow president.
Like talking to 5-year-olds.
Like any good that happens in the next 4 years, it's actually Donald Trump that did it.
Take the credit. I'm fine. I said this in the beginning. Let him be king. That's all he wants. He just wants the title. He wants the respect or whatever. Let him go wrap himself in gold and sit in Florida, and we'll pretend like he did all this and just let us run the country.
He can be the Burger King. Why don't we make him the king of Burger King?
Yes, he would love that.
Hamburger.
He said at Andrews Air Force Base in his speech, if you listen to it, he did exactly that. He said, by the way, when the economy recovers, remember that I did it. And it's like he said that. If you saw,
of course he did.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
God bless
As
you
if
for
he would
listening to
give
that.
Obama the credit for the economy he inherited.
Okay, well, this is
my
a great
God.
segue because I have a clip here. It's all of the great scandals that are already afflicting Joe Biden because, it's already happening, guys.
I was struck by the fact that he needed to read note cards to say what the executive orders that he would be signing were.
The president wants us to come together. Is that all it takes? Asking?
He also had a very difficult time with his speech. I mean, he feels like no energy for a guy who's just become president.
Much of it is thinly veiled innuendo, calling us white supremacists, calling us racist, calling us every name in the book, calling us people who don't tell the truth.
He might need to leave his Peloton behind.
I thought he was the push-up guy. Isn't he the push-up guy? What do you need a Peloton for?
We've heard that he's selectively picking reporters that would be part of his press conferences.
Shots in arms. We were promised $1 million a day by the new president. Might have started there.
Joe Biden hired private security as if he were not satisfied with the National Guard and the military. He wanted even more guns at his behest.
Biden and other high-level officials at his own inauguration were failing to socially distance. Even wearing their masks was at times optional or not correct.
Joe Biden jumped the gun a little bit today. He got sworn in at 10 minutes to noon. I don't mean to nitpick, but it does say noon according to the law.
Love that.
I just want to say there was a screenshot from Hannity's show, and it said he's been sworn in for 36 hours, and the screenshot at the bottom said Biden's disastrous first week. It's like he's been in office 36 hours. He's already had a bad week. It's amazing.
They're already all in him for his Rolex. Did you guys see the thing about the Rolex today?
God.
And I was like, you guys worshipped a guy who had wallpaper made of gold leaf.
Right?
Like,
And a golden
seriously?
toilet.
Yes. Oh yeah, I forgot that.
I figured it out. So this is the thing. So I spent like the week talking to Trump supporters, and it finally hit me after, and I was like, so they wanted someone that was like an outsider. That was the allure. And the fact that he was such a narcissistic, like selfish person who did things out of literally his own self-interest with no regard for anyone, not even his constituents, was like that. Like that fed that. Like it was like, well, he marches to the beat of his own drum, and then from there you go into that rabbit hole of like, well, he's fighting against everyone. He's fighting against the swamp and the GOP. He's fighting against the swamp and, the DNC and the deep state and all that. Because, like, that's what they all were saying. Was like, he marches to the beat of his own drum. And they loved that about him. That he did and said whatever he wanted. And, watching them actually implode afterwards, realizing that he's not pardoning any of them, was kind of interesting.
Oh, what are they going to do? Yeah.
They think his lawyers lied. They were saying they think his lawyers lied to him about pardoning his family and misled him, and that they might get sued by Trump, by the cartel after.
Oh.
Everybody gets sued by Trump. So.
Yeah. They think they actually did us all a great service by just basically telling him something that wasn't true. So I follow the legal lawyer on YouTube. He's awesome. And basically he was saying this, and others are saying the same, that basically this myth that you can't pardon somebody for X, Y, and Z without charging them with something. Well, no, Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon for anything, and he didn't say what it was. And so you don't actually have to list, which I think is a myth that's going around right now, that you have to say what the crime was. And I think that's what his lawyers told him. And so he said, oh, I don't want to charge my kids with something. And from what I've read and from everything I've been seeing is that you don't have to say what the crime is. You can just ubiquitously say that they're pardoned.
Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think the reason he was being warned to not pardon himself or his family is because it would make him, especially when it comes to the Senate, it would put him at more risk of seeming criminally liable. Not that, because you can pardon without a specific crime, but doing so would potentially be sticking his neck out a little bit.
They would also lose their Fifth Amendment. They'd lose the ability to plead the Fifth. And now they'd really be under the gun. And his kids would have to tell the truth or perjure themselves. So I think you're right, though, that, it's an interesting scenario for sure.
What's funny is this Trump era has exposed so many weaknesses in our founding documents. Like, the pardon power is so broad and vaguely spelled out. Like, he could scribble it on a napkin on Air Force One right before noon, right? And it works. Like, that's legal. I mean, because we have so many holes in our documents that we're seeing now because of this guy.
Yeah, that was my point earlier, is anyone who's slightly smarter than he is, slightly more together, I'm all afraid that they can exploit that. I mean, this is a playbook for all of the holes in our system.
I love the fact that Giuliani never got paid.
No.
20,000 a day?
Yeah, when you're like 20,000 a day is such a made-up number. And I'm like, have you heard anything like? It's like you ask Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It's like, oh, like what'd you get paid for doing Fast and the Furious? It's like, oh, $20 million, and the contract had this, and there was bonus structure set in. Like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I'm like, oh, 20,000 a day. It's like, no, that's not how like payment.
20,000 a day to leak hair dye down your face.
Well, the thing is, he said that, and he was just making it up anyway. So he's like, oh yeah, 20,000 a day, sure. And it's like, because he never had any intention of paying. It was so glorious just to watch him just like screw over this guy, Oh.
You guys know that he upfronted the money for renting out that really great place, the Four Seasons. He put the money up ahead, and Trump didn't pay him for that either.
Oh my God.
That's a lot of money to rent out a landscaping company for a press briefing.
Yeah, it was exclusive, and
I love the person that took that reservation, by the way. He like answers the phone, and the person on the other end's like, "Yes, the president wants to come do a press conference," and he's like, "All right, cool." I love that person, whoever did
The
that.
president of who?
Oh no, the best is like the writers from Veep. They're tweeting. They're like, "We could not have written something as good as Four Seasons."
No.
And I thought about it, and I was like, "That stuff totally happens on Veep." And
Oh,
like,
totally.
The Veep were like, "You outdid us. Like you outdid this." And they're like, they're so absurd in how everything happens. And I was sort of like, "Wow, you outdid Veep."
Murdering satire.
Yeah,
I
like,
honestly think that's the only downside administration leaving is the lack of material that everyone's going to have now.
Because absolutely not. I'm so
You still
happy.
got
only downside.
Do you know how sad comedians have been the past 4 years? Like everyone said this is going to be so great. All of us have been having panic attacks, and it's so hard to be creative when you're trying. You're like, okay, 4 seasons. Yeah, this is funny. I can do this. I might be like needing to flee the country. That's both of those things are going on in your head at the same time. Now we get to joke about these people, but they don't have direct control. There's still going to be crazy people doing shitty stuff. It's going to be fine. Political comedy existed before this. I'm very passionate. Yeah. I'm so sorry. I just, especially the past 2 weeks, Walter, I don't know if you felt this way. I mean, you've been doing all the interviews, but like, it's been so hard to be funny when it's so dire and so we're facing, I mean, we really, and I know we're still living that reality, but it's a dangerous time. And when you're that under the wire and that stressed for your sanity and your livelihood and your safety and all of these things, it's really hard to find humor in that. And
has anyone
I'm so grateful to be able to.
Has everyone else been getting less death threats lately?
Yeah.
Less than you.
It was like cricket.
They kicked a lot of people off too. That I think helped.
It was like I would just get these DMs, and like I just get them every day. Maybe you get like one every other day or something. And there was like a normalcy about it. And then when I got none of them. I was like,
I think.
Did you feel less important, Walter?
And it was more like, I think it was more like, oh, your president doesn't have your back anymore.
Right.
Yep. And it was like state sanctioned.
Right.
Yeah. Like state sanctioned death threats and trolling. And it was like, oh, now that this is considered terrorism, and suddenly you're not going to do this from your account or your fake account anymore. Like, amazing. Like, wow.
Yep.
It was a big shift out, and there was also a huge shift in, I think, after yesterday because we've all gotten a lot of death threats. I know everybody. I see them on your pages. I get them myself a lot. And, I think they literally, when Trump came out and was forced to basically make that speech, that process speech of, hey, you guys are un-American, basically, they jumped ship. And then when nothing happened yesterday, when the world was supposed to crumble, and they literally believed it, and then nothing happened, and we're on to the next day, and Joe Biden's like, Pete Buttigieg, a gay man, is now the transportation secretary, and then now we also have Lloyd Austin, who's an African-American defense secretary, and they're just like, they're terrified. They're terrified, and they realized it was all a lie. And then they're like, wow, I'm not going to put my neck out there when this rapture isn't going to happen. And now, actually, they're going after all the guys on Parler. I think, was it Jonathan that posted about that today?
No.
I
posted about Rand Paul being upset because Joe Biden was calling him a white supremacist, and I'm like, well, if that hit home, then ding, 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 like the hit dog hollers, and I think you got hit. So if you're worried about being called a white supremacist and you're upset about that, then it's mirror time.
Yeah.
Well, because of everything Trump has done now, even the Proud Boys, they're leaving him. They're kind of jumping ship on him. People are kind of running away from his stink. So his base is not as big as it used to be. And it's kind of crumbling right before our eyes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and who kind of gets to scoop it up, right?
Think about that psychology. Oh, go ahead, Walter.
By the way, so in Virginia on the other day. This is like a blip in the news thing. So friends of mine were in Virginia at the state capitol, and you had Proud Boys, the Black Panthers, and a bunch of other groups protesting, and they were pro 2A, pro Second Amendment, and they were all standing there like marching in unity for open carry laws, because what they were protesting is that they wanted to be able to do open carry at a protest, because the Virginia state laws, they're making a new law where you're going to protest, you cannot open carry, and actually the far left is not okay with that, as well as the far right. So you had Proud Boys and Black Panthers marching together, and it was very interesting. And you had Proud Boys there that hated Trump and said Black Lives Matter, and they called the police Cop Tifa. And it was
I've
like,
never heard that.
So it was very interesting. And it didn't make a lot of news really, but I was like fascinated by this, because I was like,
I gotta look this up.
Right?
I know.
I gotta go right now.
Black Panthers, they dressed like, with the vests and everything, and it said like Fred Hampton right across, and they were doing open carry. They were wearing helmets, marching alongside Proud Boys. It's very interesting. I've met a lot of
the whole history of the Second Amendment. You guys are probably all familiar with the history of why so many white people are pro 2A. Hi, Bert. Sorry.
I gotta go. No, it's okay. I just gotta go right now. But I really hope soon I can join the whole stream soon. I gotta go do a job right now. So, okay. I'll see you guys.
Enjoy your trip.
Take care.
Bye.
Yeah, man.
But the whole history of in Sacramento in California with Black Panthers protesting, and it made them all scared that Black people had guns, and then that was the gun control movement, and you know what I mean. It's just funny that it's like there's that whole history there is.
Well, there's two.
Speaking of, what do y'all think about the NRA going bankrupt and having to leave New York and go back to Texas?
They're just skipping lawsuits. They're skipping lawsuits. But all they're going to do down here, they've got some heavy ties down here. They're coming here to make more profit. They were actually more financially sound last year. I made a joke about it, for them having to declare bankruptcy, but they're literally just running from lawsuits. And I really hope that they're not allowed to do that, because they shouldn't be allowed to just close down there and then reincorporate somewhere else as a nonprofit. The whole thing is a mess.
Exactly. We don't want them in our backyard, Saadia. But Saadia is in Texas like me, and it's jarring. I've seen people with long guns in Target or in a Chili's, walking around. It's like,
I am from California. I would lose my shit, Jonathan. Oh my God.
Saadia, I'm
laughing.
They have long guns in freaking Chili's, and I'm like, do I have to wait for him to cock it, or do I have to wait for him to start shooting? I mean, when do I tackle them? Right? And they're just walking through Target. I'm like, no, dude, this is not freedom to me.
You can carry it on your hip, and just carrying it on your hip is pretty intimidating out here. And just imagine, I can't imagine what it's going to be like for us when you got the NRA running shop here, and you got Ted Cruz, that's backing him up. It's a pretty ugly mix. I'm scared for Texas, but I'm happy for y'all in New York.
Yeah. It's bizarre. I mean, same thing. You do have that weird movement. Sorry, I thought you do have that weird movement of people that think that unrestricted means unrestricted. And I had a guy come after me about 2A the other day when I posted about how do we really, like, the whole mission was like, you have guns so you can protect yourself and overthrow the government if they actually, protection is one thing, but overthrow the government with militias if they're bad. Well, we've got the most sophisticated military on earth, and you're not going to win that fight. And I think they figured that out on the 20th. Like, no matter what you have, you're not going to beat the U.S. military. But the other aspect to this is that they're saying that 2A is unrestricted. And I'm like, okay, so you can have a rocket launcher? Is that what you're saying? Like, can you bring a rocket launcher into Target? And these guys are basically saying, yeah. And I'm
Don't give them ideas.
Right.
Don't give ideas, please.
Oh no, yeah, sorry, no, I know, but it's so off the rails. Is really the
they
point.
bitch and moan about these restrictions, but you can't go buy a fully automatic gun. Like that's restricted from you. Like you said, you can't go buy a rocket launcher. So they're okay with those restrictions now. So I'm saying you just keep applying these restrictions, and of course they're going to cry and holler, but that doesn't mean that it's not the right thing to do, right? And the original intent behind the Second Amendment was not to overthrow the government.
Right,
I mean,
right, but that's how they look at it. That's
Right,
how
yeah.
that's their new interpretation. It's like we can protect ourselves from the Democrats. You know,
What's great is we got these representatives that want to bring their gun into the House chamber, and I'm like,
oh yeah.
The only reason you would want to bring that in is to defend yourself, right? And you had the perfect opportunity to do that, and you didn't because you knew you weren't the target. That's why you didn't. I think what did Maggie say that the other day? I feel like were we talking about that, Maggie? I think Maggie said that the other day. They didn't use their gun because they knew they weren't the target.
If it was me, that sounds pretty smart. So it might have been me. I'm just kidding.
It was definitely you're so smart.
I mean, I'm more of a leftist, so there's leftist organizations that are pro-gun. There's like the Socialist Rifle, Association. But their rhetoric is not as insane as like the NRA. The NRA is just just wants to throw guns everywhere, like guns for everyone. At least with the other one, there's a proper ideology about it. It's like, well, disaffected communities should have access to weapons, and it's like rising, and they're like, okay, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're,
You look at the reason why Black Panthers needed guns and why, you know what I mean? Like that history there, it's like, yeah, they really were facing a tyrannical government. They actually,
they were saying when you protest, they're like, their argument was like, when we protest and we would do open carry, the police had to change their strategy around us. Like they couldn't
they couldn't just
smacking us, and our group at these protests fared better than the rest of them, who were just unarmed. So it was like, they had and they weren't like, we don't want like one gun per person. We want, so I'm fine with that rhetoric versus like the NRA rhetoric, which is just unrestrained, like steroidal, guns for everyone.
Fetishization.
Yeah.
I like that. Whatever that word is of guns that the NRA promotes is just scary. It's like, a kid gets a gun at his gender reveal party, and it's like that's going a little far,
Yeah.
They skip that well regularly.
I think we just need to do away with gender reveal parties. They only call the guns and fires. I think
looking good, Jonathan.
Hey.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's the Jonathan show.
I'm doing all the work here, okay?
And you're killing it.
Yes.
Good
job.
I know.
Okay, so real quick, I want to pivot and talk about something new. The news just came out. They're not going to start the impeachment trial until February 9th now. It just came out. Schumer just announced.
I thought it was going to be Monday.
Well, they're delivering the articles Monday. Yeah, they're delivering the articles Monday.
But they can push it. I thought they were going to wait to deliver it to closer to when they were going to do.
I thought they had.
You don't need to highlight me for this part.
No, I appreciate. I thought
I didn't highlight anybody.
Once they delivered it, I thought they had to start once they delivered it. I think.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Right. Yeah.
But
are they pushing that back too? Because I haven't seen that.
I haven't read the entire article. It just popped up my thing, and it says says that.
I thought there was a timeline as soon as they get it delivered.
Yeah.
Well, once that's delivered, it's got to be cabinet related then, because they want to get the cabinet positions in, and they don't want to. That must be.
I mean, that's.
My only concern with impeachment and is like, I mean, I actually don't like Comey, but he actually made a good point. He's like, we don't want a situation where we just give this guy center stage, and like we're giving him just this platform, and he actually does well when you give him a platform and make him say center stage, and and on top of that, it's like, all right, we need to there's things to do in the first 90 to 100 days of the presidency that are very crucial, and we're like, it's like, how much are we going to waste on this? On the same time, same thing. It's like, all right, can we just make this a week? And just,
exactly.
Yeah, I say get it over with.
Get it done.
It is very simple.
I think we did.
Just can we just do this and can we just wrap this up and not make this this Benghazi Whitewater nonsense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't like Comey either.
Yeah, I don't like him either. I was like,
but it is true. I mean,
I want to disagree with you.
But then again, I mean, that's kind of catering to him, though, right? It's like you're making that decision based on what you would do to him. Like you would give him a platform. So you're basing your decision on how to mete out justice based on how it affects him, you know? But it needs, he has been impeached. The trial needs to take place. And if he's convicted, it is important because it strips him of his post-presidential benefits and keeps him from running again. So I think he needs to be an afterthought. Like how he benefits or how it affects him needs to be an afterthought. And then we need to just do what the law dictates that we do.
Yeah. I mean,
Who
all of that
incited
is
the riot at the Capitol building? Hold him accountable. You can go to hell.
Yeah, I think it's an accountability thing. More than anything, I think Mitch, I almost think Mitch wants to do it to try to save his own party, for him to have the Republican Party actually impeach him and set a tone. And that's why I think Cruz and Howley are in for it, because I think they actually want to make an example of those two guys. So I think there is some probability that they're going to actually impeach him and convict. And then I think Howley and Cruz should be really worried about their political future because of what they've done, not only because of the image that they have now put on their party, but Mitch wants them out. It's become pretty clear that Mitch is like, all right, game over. We lost, and I'm just going to rip through my party and try to weed out the bad guys. It seems like to me, anyways. But I don't think that I don't think there's any reason to hesitate, because all of the guys that were leading and gals that were leading both parties were saying they could do joint sessions in a day to do cabinet and impeachment. So I don't really understand why they're pushing it out. And I'll read up on it, Maggie. But that seems odd to me. Why delay at this point? I don't know. I'd rather get it over with too, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like it's going to happen on my birthday week, which really makes me mad. So I'm not here for this.
They should know this. I mean, why were they not informed?
I will.
Why is
go
that not a
and
national holiday?
I'm going to go talk to Schumer right now.
True.
He's probably watching, guys.
Schumer, honestly, who just got and this is so childish for me to say, but Schumer, who said erection.
His erection.
Oh yeah, that today.
The comedy does still go on, guys. The comedy still goes on.
And that's so much more fun, isn't it? A good erection joke. What we needed.
Absolutely. Everyone loves a good erection joke. It's
imagine if he doubled down and he was like, I wasn't like, he's like, I meant it. I meant it. It's an erection.
I thought long and hard about this, and he definitely
well done.
Huge erection.
Well done.
Touche.
I'm not gonna lie, I totally made that joke earlier today. I was not.
That's what comedians do.
Use it
Bring
more.
out their material.
I'm cheering out. I have to leave and do stuff, but I love you all. It's lovely to see everyone here. And
thank you so much for coming on.
Stay safe.
Thanks, Walter.
Thank you.
Be safe,
everyone.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye.
See you, Walter.
Happy Democracy Week.
Yay.
Okay, I actually think this might be the first time we've ever